Welcome to the Open Era Podcast. My name is Devang and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Simon Bushell. Bush, how's it going, sir? Halfway through Wimbledon. Pretty big week for the UK in general. Good things are happening? Question mark.
Oh, well, that's very much
it's
open to interpretation, is it not? Yeah. Yes, maybe? Question mark. Glastonbury was obviously this past weekend as well, so lots of big British events going on. Formula One, obviously Wimbledon, obviously the football as well, and the general election. So a very, very action-packed 7 days if you're in that tiny island.
Good stuff. A lot of rain, but not a crippling amount like we saw at the French Open. I mean, there is something to be said about how Wimbledon does the scheduling, where there is no like morning and night session separation, which I think might help them. But it's been pretty good in terms of the weather. We've got some upsets that we're going to get into on the women's side. But let's start, because we're watching him right now. Bush, Jannik Sinner, Carlos Alcaraz, both finding it not extremely easy going in the first week.
I think that's a very fair thing to say, yeah. And is it reasonable to say that the Sinner-Berrettini match was the pick of all of that? It was fun to watch. Obviously, it's fun if you're a tie-break fan as well. And I heard on the commentary a few days ago, Nick Kyrgios of all people, that was saying that it's actually good to get some of these, like a really tough player in the second round as you're making a deep run, just simply because you're sort of battle tested and you feel like you can find your game on the grass courts. I think Sinner's looked really, really good. I think Charlie has looked off in no uncertain part because he has been taken deep in multiple matches in a row now. That being said, also happened last year and he managed to come through it. So, no, I mean, we've seen nothing that wouldn't suggest they're going to meet in the semi-final, and I still don't really know who's going to win that one.
Yeah, of the two, I mean, Sinner was like holding his hand, like for, I don't know if it was his hand or it was his wrist at a point in that Shelton match, but overall, of the two, I feel more comfortable with Sinner at this point. There was a point there in the Shelton match where he did like a reaction through the legs return that ended up working out because he hit a winner at the end. But the look on Ben Shelton's face, I think, said it all. Like, Sinner is reaching this level that it's kind of fun to see in real time. And I feel like a little less so from Carlos. I mean, the Humbert matchup was really tough on the Discord. I know Josh was thinking Humbert had a chance to do well at Wimbledon, and he was a tough out in 4 sets. But Sinner has the aura in full steam right now, including the Gucci ads all over London.
He does, absolutely. A little bit of spice in that match as well, it has to be said. Wasn't all smooth sailing.
I love Ben Shelton, but I do love when something goes against him, there's like this look of indignation that's met like with little sound, and he's normally really loud. So I do enjoy, like, when he's not happy, it's just a smoldering look that could kill you just by staring.
He does have a sort of big baby energy, unfortunately. When it's not all going according to plan. And it has to be said, like, just transitioning here nicely, a big, considering Francis TFO was playing against a clown.
Yeah. God. Oh, God.
Big win for Charlie.
The clown comment. Between this and the Fritz and Rinder, was it Rinderketch? Who did Fritz go with? Yeah, it was. I don't know if the Tiafo comment, obviously you'd probably want that back. It didn't seem like he was totally down or having fun with tennis for a while here in 2024. Just in general, regarding or looking at some of his comments, that's what I extrapolated, Bush. So, like, I don't think it was meant to be as incendiary as it sounded. But I mean, once you use the clown word, it's tough to come back. I do wonder, though, the Rinderketch thing didn't seem that bad to me, but I do enjoy Taylor Fritz taking up to another level, implying he has to go home, even though Rinderketch still had doubles left.
All 3 American men involved in some form of spice during the course of the week. Love it. It's bringing drama back to tennis. And as we all know, Dev, there was luckily no drama elsewhere on the tennis scene this week as well.
A really good couple weeks or week for the Americans in general on the men's and women's side. So USA, July 4th. Shouts to our American friends. What the hell's going on with your country, et cetera, et cetera. But do you want to touch on Perry card now, or I think we should, because the Musetti matchup is mouth-watering for a few reasons. But we saw Gary Nathan write about Umpechi Pericard, the lucky loser in Defector, that set the stage for one of the most ridiculous servers we've seen in a while.
Yeah, and I think there's some stuff floating around about his average serve speed in the tournament being about 117, 120 miles an hour in that range. So you're going to build a lot of gîtes in the south of France with that kind of pace on the second serve. He is obviously, he's a monster, and I mean that in the most flattering way possible, because he's a tough out when you're 6'8" and you're serving the way that he is. But very smooth strokes, not long strokes. Technically, looks very, very solid on both wings. The height gives him such advantage on that single hander as well to crush it down the line. I think it's become a staple that we've seen during the first week of this tournament, how many of those he's crushing, like just leaning on them in a way that players who are slightly shorter in stature are not able to. He's just a really good player, and he moves incredibly well for a man of his stature and sort of the frame that he has. Like, he's a big, big dude, and I think his upbringing, playing multiple sports and that sort of side of things has stood him in good stead here, because he looks like a real player, Dave. He doesn't just look like someone who's going to be a 1 week wonder here, considering his age and considering all the things that he's sort of still ascending through. I think we've got a player that we're going to watch for quite a lot of while here.
That's the cool thing too, right? Like, I think we talked about Arthur Fees quite a bit on this pod, and we picked him to be one of the guys to watch this year, but he came up with Fees, and they played doubles together, had success, had pretty big contests against each other as well in the singles. So definitely a name to watch. That Musetti match should be an incredible contrast in styles. I think we're set for this collision course between Sinner and Alcaraz. There are folks in the periphery that can upset that. I think Danny Medvedev's had a hilarious opening week, as he tends to do at Wimbledon. Grigor Dimitrov might have looked, I don't know if I was because it was against Gael Monfils that we can't take it this over the top, but he looks quite good himself as well. So, I mean, there's a possibility that we do not get this semifinal between Alcaraz and Sinner, but it's trending that way. And man, am I fascinated, Bush, because you're right. Alcaraz does look slightly more vulnerable. I mean, I didn't think the TFO match, even though it was in a breaker in the fourth set, for some reason it did feel like it wasn't the end for him in my mind, right? Like, I thought even in the tiebreak he was going to come through. And so I'm curious to see if that stands up against Sinner, if they were to play.
What a collection of fourth round matchups, though, in terms of all the storylines that you could possibly want. We're eating well, I think, on the men's side of things, considering I think we thought it was going to be a wide open tournament, just given there are lots of positives you can draw from all of these players, but there are equal number of flaws as well about them on this surface. But just the matchup selection, obviously we just had Sinner, Shelton, which was, I think, mouth-watering before you went into it, just given how well Shelton has played Sinner as well. Dimitrov, Medvedev, its own unique thing. Alcaraz, Humbert, which we touched upon. Thomas Paul against Batista Agut from the grave. Batista Agut, incredible
legit
work.
Stunned. I did a double take when I saw RBA's name in there, but the fact that he beat evil Fabio Fognini, not evil, but he has such a different look that I had to do a complete double take when I saw those two playing. Also, pour one out for Casper Ruud, who needs to get off grass.
That quarter of the draw, always one that you circle if Casper Ruud is in it on grass. Musetti, of course, my boy, against Mpechi Pedicard, as we were saying. Fritz, Zverev, Fils, de Minaur, and then Rune versus Djokovic. Great. Each individual one of them I was excited to watch, or am excited to watch, barring, of course, Fritz Zverev. But I think lots of good stuff here.
Taylor Fritz has the potential to win over a nation, potentially a world, in the next few days. So the world waits, and we watch with bated breath. About Djokovic, Rune, Bush, Novak's looked okay. I mean, it was hard to know, really, because he's coming in off a knee surgery. He's talked about it. I think he's been a little more open about where he's at with the Serbian press, which makes sense. But he's saying he's not 100% at all. Like, it doesn't feel totally great, but he's looked okay. He hasn't played necessarily the top of the top. This is going to be a really good way to gauge where he's at, right? Because like I don't think, I mean, Holger has troubles against Quinton Nollis, but he's going to be a really tough out for Novak.
He is a very, very tough out. We had some comments in our Discord about how this probably might be a tough matchup in the sense that Holger Rune has a good record against Novak Djokovic. I think it's 3-2, right, going into this one. Bruni likes the matchup. I don't think he's going to be scared by it. I think he's going to be quite happy to play Novak here, and I think his game matches up really, really well. I think if you were going to look at a spot for Djokovic to go out the tournament, this certainly seems like it. You see, on the other hand, you could also draw it up and say that he wins like 2-2 and 4. It's that sort of ridiculousness at the moment. But I don't know, man. This does feel slightly different, just given who the matchup is, what the surface is, and the state of Djokovic's body.
One way or another, we're going to get a really good idea of what Novak can do at the end here, because he's got a lot riding on the line for this. He's trying to tie Fed, obviously, for Wimbledon titles, and how many more shots at this will he have with those other two young bucks in the other half of the draw, hanging around and looking very legitimate each slam they enter to make it to the very end. Anything else on the men's side, Bush? Quickly, the Canadians. I mean, Felix at the mercy of the rain gods in that weirdly bizarre Kokkinakis match, but not something to write home about for him. And Chapo, who has flashes on grass that leave us wanting more, but ultimately wasn't enough to beat Ben Shelton.
What a state of affairs, isn't it, to be 3 years removed from Chapo getting to the semi-final, and all of is it 3 years removed? God, time flies. I think it is, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and almost being an afterthought coming into this tournament, and really an afterthought in this segment as well, just given the demonstration of how the Canadian men have fallen off in the space of the last 18 months or so. He's still coming back. I think he's still hanging around, and you can still see potential and flashes of the player that he was before. You can't be doing back-to-back 5-setters though. Not at this level. You're just gonna get destroyed. So he's got to find ways of chipping matches together and finding a sustainable and consistent level. There
was a way to finish that Altmaier match a lot quicker. And obviously he would have liked to do that, but he couldn't, and it had an effect in his next day. I mean, Ben Shelton as well. Ben Shelton had played 10,000 hours when he headed into that Sinner match. So that was going to be a tough go for him. Let's leave the men there. Let's talk now about the women's side. A lot of big exits, some through play, some through injury. Arina Sabalenka withdrew just before the tournament started. So did Victoria Azarenka. Today, as you record, in what was shaping up to be an amazing end to that match, an amazing match in general, but that Keys-Paolini match, Bush, what a shame that Madison Keys was forced to retire due to injury.
Yeah, and just over nothing as well. Completely inconspicuous, or
the stretches she was doing with the physio are some of the things I've been doing since I busted my back again, and it made me shudder when I saw that, because I thought, okay, well, her back is destroyed and she cannot move, so this is bad.
Yeah, I felt sick just watching it from the outside, just someone stretching. Nope, that's too much for me. I'm not partaking in this. Paolini's looked good though, has she not?
Really
during this tournament,
really
just very, very, very solid all around. Like every bit the top 10 player that she's turned into.
What's that cliche? Big match player, but I feel like she is. Like she does show up, and it doesn't like it's not like she has a huge track record on this surface either. But no, she's a baller confirmed, and it's good to see her follow up that French Open with a run at Wimbledon as well. But that was tough to watch. But our picks, Bush. are gone. Ons Jabeur out, losing to Svitolina. Iga Swiatek losing to Putintseva. Putintseva played extremely well in that match, I will say, Bush, towards the end as well. But who are you more surprised about, maybe, to see go?
Definitely the world number one. Just given she looked fine. I think she looked more than fine. She looked pretty good through the first 2 rounds, and even looked pretty good through the first set against Putintseva as well. Noises coming out of the camp and from a press conference basically saying she was tired, like she did not recover well enough following the French Open, did not do the right recovery in general. Also, some pointed comments, I would say, in the direction of Putintseva about how the underarm serving, some of the comments that were made on court. Yeah, I think grumpy, I think pissed off is probably the right way to describe how Iga Swiatek sounded following this matchup. Doesn't sound like she's a huge fan of the person she lost to either. So, yeah, probably that's the bigger surprise of the tournament. All that being said, it's hard to do back-to-back. It's hard to go to the French Open, and it's hard to win at Wimbledon back-to-back. Not many players have done it.
Yeah, and the haters will say she was stuck in Ostapenko in the next round, and I'm not saying that at all. I am not saying that at all. But I like the spice as well. Give me that spice. They do not like each other. No, that was clear. That was very clear. Shouts to Matthew McConaughey shouting out Danielle Collins, by the way, which I thought was just random enough. Tennis is now at that point where basically only old celebrity actors are the ones talking about it in this way. Is it a bad sign that Steve Carroll and Matthew McConaughey and Ben Stiller are the influencers on tennis?
Good Lord.
Is that not a sign, man?
Is that not a perfect indication of the sport, though? They are the target demographic.
Holy cow. It makes me shudder. It makes me think, what the hell? What are we doing here?
True story, by the way. So I've texted you about multiple of me having the tennis on at work and having multiple comments directed towards me. Another amazing one that happened during the course of the week. I had the tennis on. Someone walked past my desk and said, "What time's Roger playing at?" Fucking fantastic. That's so good.
No, not like this. Not like this. Come on. Okay. What a disaster.
How do you keep a straight face to that?
What a disaster.
Someone's asking it sincerely to you.
Did you answer? What did you answer? Did you say he's in the stands, Jack, or whatever the person's name was?
Oh dear. I think I tried to politely fudge it so they might have to lessen the blow slightly. To be like, oh, I think he's not playing anymore. I think he's
That's nice.
He's a bit old. Yeah.
You're a good person, Bush. You're a good person.
And then I told them they were a fucking moron.
Yeah, what I sent to you in regards to the first person that mentioned this was far more obscene and not okay. Okay, I quickly mentioned Ons, but a bit disappointed for Ons, obviously. Like, we're not in that awkward, God, I hope she wins and she needs to win for everyone to feel good stage. She's only 29 years old, but I was disappointed to see her exit the way she did against Svitolina in straight sets, Bush, and more so because I had a horrible run of picks with this Wimbledon. Hubie Hurkacz out due to injury as well. I'm sorry, Hubie. That's on me.
I think Double H might have won deep in this tournament if he hadn't got injured.
Tough draw too. Fees is no cupcake draw, right? Fees is a player, especially on grass. So the last two I wanted to talk about are tough. They're happening right now as we speak. And the Emma Raducanu discourse is now morphed into, again, a hilarious sideshow, which we're going to talk about in Parting Shot. So maybe we'll couch those two, Bush. So we'll leave those two till later. Is there anything else WTA-wise you want to talk about? There's some other stuff, obviously. I mentioned who has exited, but who remains. Coco Gauff playing today as we record. Danielle Collins, I mentioned. Ostapenko, Paolini, Elena Rybakina, who has kind of been out of the conversation due to injury and not really due to her fault.
Yes. I think the two players that you mentioned there had the best opportunity to win this tournament. It feels it does kind of feel a bit rando, this tournament. It does kind of feel like you can see a scenario where, I don't know who you would throw into this list, where Jasmine Paolini is lifting the rosewater dish at the end of it. Like, it kind of has that feeling. Rybakina does not look that good.
No,
she's finding ways to win, but it's been a bit all over the place. That Wozniacki match was horrible to watch. It has to be said. I don't know. Like, I listed off the fourth round matchups on the men's side of things. The fourth round matchups, I think, on the women's side are just more fascinating than they are like mouth-watering, if that's the right way of phrasing it, where it's just chin stroking. Like, I don't really know who's going to win these.
Speculating. That image popped into my mind instantly. So good choice on the imagery. No, you're right. And I mean, we have the power couple. Kalinskaya is still in there too against Rybakina. It's a Sin Cow. I don't know what you want to call them. Sinkaya. Sinkaya actually is quite good. Sinkaya could be the celebrity power couple here, potentially as well. Paula Badosa, who's had a really the scheduling. What ends up happening to matches that have to stop on the outside course and then overnight are subject to just the whims of the organizers, in the sense that, like, they have to wait for full matches to complete before they resume. Really, really bad luck of the draw for a few. I just happen to Felix and Kokkinakis, but also I think Badosa, Vekic have been suffering through this as well. But I've been impressed overall by Paula Badosa. As Stefanos crashed out, she powered through.
She has come out of the breakup the better. No way, and the reunification.
Are they? Yeah, exactly. Again. Who can keep up? Okay, we'll leave it there. Anything else, Bush, before we go to party shots?
Not yet. I don't know who's going to win this tournament still, which is a positive thing on both sides.
Perfect. All right. We'll take a break. When we come back to close up shop, it's parting shots on Open Era. Welcome back to the Open Air podcast. Bush, I forgot to mention this regarding Carlos Alcaraz, but he has now made 9 slam quarterfinals at the age of 21. He could probably break that record if he takes care of business in the next 2 slams. Are we acknowledging this enough? Does it feel like we've normalized phenom greatness?
That's a good question. Do you think he is respected enough for how good he is in modern era tennis? I actually don't think he is. I think that's a reasonable point of how easy he's making this look.
Exactly. And we just talked about how it's looking a bit more difficult for him, but perhaps that's what will make people appreciate it more, in that twisted, effed up way that we tend to do things in sports and society as a whole. But he's at 9. He's Boris Becker, Bjorn Borg, and Mats Wilander have 10 for that record. Alcaraz is tied with Nadal at 9. And at 8 is Djokovic, Edberg, and Sampras. That was via Chris Odo, who you should follow on Twitter. He's an excellent Twitter follow for tennis. But yeah, awesome stuff from Carlos. So yeah, it just made me think, though, about how we look at these guys, him and Sinner as well, I would include, I guess. Okay, parting shots. Bush, Andy Murray, emotional, farewell. Didn't play singles. He was recovering from a back surgery. It was a race against time to get fit. Not that surprised he pulled it off, because he's a freak and he's done things that we didn't think was possible a few times, but was able to play with his brother. Didn't go well in the first round, losing to a couple of Aussies. No surprise there, I guess. But overall, thought the thing was quite well done. Bush, I thought Wimbledon usually gets this kind of stuff right. And from Sue Barker on down, I thought this was great. The video was great. The legends are great. It was just really nice to see, and it got me. I got emotional.
The only thing that I could think of during this whole situation of it kind of unfolding in his retirement is that rich people know how to throw good dinner parties. Like, they know how to host. And you would have been upset if they didn't get this right. Yes. Yes. This is great. I really enjoyed it. I think it was obviously emotional for a lot of people watching who've seen Murray grow up and become a champion and be really like a statesman for the sport as well. It was, I think, very fitting for him to go out playing doubles with his brother. I think the people that were there, Subaka interviewing, the sort of length of the whole thing as well, I thought it was just really, really well done. You can't have a more fitting send-off, I think, to a player on centre court who's meant so much to that tournament and to a nation as well.
So on the other hand, Andy had signed up for mixed doubles as well with Emma Raducanu. Emma expressing excitement, dream come true, playing with it, her idol, etc. Andy kind of went through how this went down, calling her coach, seeing if she would be interested. She was. Here we go. But then on the day of their first round match in mixed doubles, Emma, citing a sore wrist that she woke up with, withdrew, and Andy's Wimbledon career was done. Now, the reaction to this is what you would expect. A lot of people destroying Emma for doing this, for ruining Andy's big farewell, even though he already had one with his brother and had a whole damn ceremony. So, I mean, there's that. But then also, I guess, the idea that why did Emma sign up? You know, if she wasn't going to follow through with this commitment. She's having a good tournament. The draw kind of opened up for her. She was in that section with Sabalenka and crew. And then there was the discourse, of course, with Judy Murray, who I think responded to a tweet about this with just one word. And then that, of course, increased the pile on. Judy Murray locked her account and then responded some 24 hours later with, quote, "Not sure anyone understands sarcasm these days. Pretty sure the scheduling fourth match court one with singles following day will have played a major part in any decision making." So she's now scolding us, I guess, for not reading into what she meant by that one word, which was awkward or astonishing. I can't remember now. What's your take on all this, Bush?
I mean, like with everything, it's all massively overblown on every side, and everyone just kind of needs to chill out a little bit. I also think, without being too flippant about it, there is a little bit of an understanding of why everyone is sort of aggrieved in this situation. I actually kind of think there's a situation where everyone is entitled to be a little upset as well. Having just said the opposite of that, which is very funny. I personally don't give a fuck, I guess, is what I should sort of start off as saying. My own personal opinion. But I think kind of assessing the situation from the outside, it's an emotional situation, right? You can understand why people would be upset if you've agreed to play doubles and it's going to be the last situation where an all-time legend is playing alongside and you agree to do that. I think you should be held a little bit account to that. While at the same time recognizing it is an event that almost likely to not win. Emma Raducanu is still in singles. The scheduling was bad. She's coming back of a lot of injuries. That is all very true. I think all of that is, I think like with all of these situations, there's a little bit of emotional blowing off of steam that everyone has sort of done, and you could let the dust settle, and you're like, yeah, I mean, everyone's entitled to feel a little bit upset here. I think that's okay.
And in that sense, I just piled on Judy Murray as well, but I don't fault her for taking some time away and then returning to the scene, because I understand why she would be emotional about this as well. That's well said, Bush. I mean, the shitty part as well is that if Emma Raducanu does not win in this very difficult match she's in with Lulu Sun from New Zealand, and I mean, the discourse will become, I think, doubly worse, because we'll have people taking it and zigging and zagging their own ways regarding whether or not that impacted her performance against Lulu Sun, who's playing out of her mind and who has an amazing story of her own, getting through qualifiers to get here. Yeah, go ahead.
I do think, sorry to cut you off, just as an additional thought in closing on that one, I do think there is something to be said in this situation for Judy Murray doing better. For someone of her age and of her status within the sport and also within British tennis, and an understanding of how someone who is, I'm saying this tongue in cheek, and it's going to sound like I'm making a joke out of this, but I do genuinely, there's a serious point behind it. Someone who has gone so on record as wanting to defend women's rights for whatever that means, understanding how this looks and how this plays to a 22-year-old woman who has been the subject of press attention. I say this with all the grace in the world, but please get off Twitter and, do fucking better. I think that it probably does need to be said, whilst understanding that this is an emotional situation.
Nailed it. I think you nailed it. Okay, the TFO stuff, I think we covered it a bit. I don't know if you wanted to go any deeper on that, Bush.
No, not really.
So, Novak Djokovic, the most interesting man in tennis, probably at this point. I think so, actually. I'll say that. I think he is. And I've noticed now he's going off, so to speak, on more tennis-related stuff beyond the PTPA stuff, I think, which is interesting. And I thought this whole answer he gave during his press about tennis at the club level, it was super long, and I'm not going to read it all, but he talks about the danger of club tennis ceding ground to padel or pickleball in their courts, in their clubs, and eventually risking not having tennis be a part of these places anymore. And he mentions how the big dogs, aka the Grand Slams, are always going to eat well, but down the ladder, regarding just the sport as a whole, and also the 350 to 400 players who make a living off of it, it's never been more in jeopardy. I thought it was really good. And I know they're working on things behind the scenes in terms of what his camp is trying to do, but I'm curious, Simon, what pull do you think Novak has, and what direction do you think he wants to take the sport in if it's big enough? Because I think he potentially is one of those people that will be one of the major players on how tennis is like handled, I think as a sport going forward.
I think this might be the most positive and introspective anyone on the tour has been about the state of the tour that I've seen in quite a few years. I think he is spot on with all the things that he's saying during this very lengthy answer. One of the things I think has come up often on this show is about how the space is often required for tennis, and how it's sort of from an equity standpoint, you need space. Tennis requires space to be able to play, and that is at a premium in cities these days, just given the cost and price of land. And then you're getting into a situation where the further you get out, suburbs are often wealthier. Suburbs are also often places where you are competing with different sports as well, not in the same way. So I think from that standpoint, it's completely understandable that there is significant work to be done. I was thinking about this actually the other day from a city planning perspective. Like, why would you ever, if you had limited space, why would you ever put it into a single sport or a double sport or at a maximum where you could only have 2 people playing or 4 people playing on a court at a time? Would you not rather devote that to a baseball diamond or a basketball court or a football pitch, or like any of these where you can actually encourage more participation and community building?
There's a park near our place that has a hockey rink that in the summer turns into a pickleball court now, where you can have 8 courts pretty much. And there's a tennis court beside it, but that tennis court only has 2 courts. And like you said, Bush, there's a limitation there. And those pickleball courts are always full. Not to say the tennis ones aren't, but I'm seeing it. I'm seeing these examples more in real time. And I think back to that time we were in North Van, at the Vancouver Open, Bush, and that area, that facility, and what it might look like now in terms of the setup. Because the tennis clubs I've been to recently, there's a lot of space being carved out for non-tennis stuff. And I just think down the road, how the sport is going to deal with that is unknown. So let's see what they're going to do, because that person in your office who thought Fed was still playing and didn't know what Wimbledon was, those are the people potentially we got to talk about. Because we might get into this in 2 challenges remaining, but there's examples of things breaking through, and they're not always the same. But I'm curious to see how this plays out.
I think it's so fascinating from an infrastructure perspective. And I think this actually holds true North America, Europe, regardless of spaces that are, or of places that have effectively punted on public infrastructure, who have basically said, like, no, too expensive, we're not building anything else. Like, no more community centers, no more football pitches, nothing. Like, private sector can take care of it. Like you can go to a football camp, you can go to an elite facility, and that's it. And just we haven't quite seen the knock-on effect of that from sort of the neoliberalization of sport from an infrastructure perspective yet, because I think we had a situation where like you had a bunch of specifically sporting infrastructure that was built post Second World War, and that stuff is beginning to crumble and fall apart, and they're just not building any more of it. Certainly not in North America, right? Or like the places that it is being built or upkept in are in wealthy areas. That's just the truth of it. Like there is no one's building a nice new set of tennis courts in the fucking city center of Toronto. It's not happening, right? Like you're not getting the money to do that. No one's putting it up for it. So I just wonder how that's going to have a knock-on effect down the road.
Yeah, a lot of corporate philanthropy decks probably.
Yeah, no, seriously. Yeah. Absolutely. You might get a developer who will build you might get one court or something on top of a building somewhere. Yeah.
Novak also talked about best of 3 sets at the slams in week 1, which I think also, and I'll take Ben Shelton again as an example. If Ben had won that match against Sinner, he was cooked, like not able to keep going and perform physically at the level he needed to win the tournament. That probably wouldn't have happened. I don't know if he would have still won the tournament if it was 3 sets in the first week either. So there's that as well. But generally, I think with the elements in play and with not every court having a roof, this does seem to make more sense beyond what we've been talking about regarding 3 sets at the first week of the slam and then best of 5 afterwards.
I must admit, I always thought this was kind of like a shit post and never thought it was legitimate until hearing Novak Djokovic talk about it. It's like, okay, maybe actually people are. This might actually happen. I thought we were just like all in our own internal circle here. I'm still down for 4 game sets. I know that sounds sacrilegious.
Easy ace.
Keep 5 sets. Just go that
remember
way.
You, easy ace. Who remember your bizarre tennis 2.0 theory. But yeah, let's see if this happens quickly. Simon Ash Barty. She's at Wimbledon. She's doing commentary. She's good at that. Saw some whispers on the Discord from Josh. Quote: Devang might have been right. Ash Barty could be coming back, seeing the field susceptible to the Aussie assassin. But I thought she was very good on the comms. And she also has been pretty definitive about not playing. So I don't know where I stand.
Yeah, I mean, she's pretty definitive in this Today video that
she's
she
like,
did.
I am not playing. She might as well have named me directly when she said no.
So I was listening to this podcast with this asshole who keeps asking me about it.
Yeah, that sounds
I'm
right.
not playing again tonight.
That checks out.
Yep. That's the only thing I wanted to include here. She's not playing. Stop asking her. It's not happening.
Federer documentary, you saw it, Bush. I think I'm already pre-sad, so I can't watch it yet, but you were moved, yes?
I was, but at points and at places that I didn't think I would be. I found myself being moved by the people around Roger Federer far more than him himself, probably because we've been so exposed to his journey off the court. Is that you tend to forget the people around him, his kids, his wife, his family, his camp, his parents specifically, of what that actually looks like behind the scenes, of how it's not just one person, it is a village to make you become world number 1 and stay at the top of the sport for so long. I think this documentary isn't actually that good. Maybe that's a hot take overall. I think it's quite weak.
How dare you, sir?
Especially the second half of it. Like, basically the entire second half of the documentary is about Rafael Nadal, and I didn't think there was anything in here that I hadn't seen before.
Right.
The behind-the-scenes stuff at the Laver Cup is very cool, but it's quite thin overall, it has to be said. It's not particularly compelling across the board, but I think the moments where it really lands are very, very good and very well worth watching, but the whole is not more than the sum of its parts.
This is also the curse of the sports documentary, I think, as well.
I agree.
I will watch it, but I'm putting it off. But eventually I will watch it. So I'll report back on that. Let's get to 2 challenges remaining. Huge week for the United Kingdom, Bush. Do you want to go first?
It's a heavy Brit 2 challenges remaining here, isn't it?
Can we get Park Life by Blur in the background, Greg? We have the rights to that, but just play it. Bed this last segment with that.
Song 2 playing over and over again. Okay, 2 things. Firstly, Glastonbury. I watched a bunch of the coverage. The BBC's coverage of Glastonbury was excellent, of course. BBC Music's YouTube channel, I believe, has most of the coverage on there from getting a sense of what the performances are like. You might get individual singles or like extended parts of sets. Really worth checking out. Glastonbury's great. Like there's so much good music going on. You get introduced to new bands. And where else in the world can you have Coldplay playing alongside SZA alongside Shania Twain? That sounds amazing.
We got ukulele guy playing to Dua Lipa, an unimpressed Dua Lipa, which will live on in infamy. I don't know if I could do it in the sense of like the camping and that sea of people, but I'm very curious because I feel like it'd be a perfect place to be. I love watching the videos. I love the bands that play there like every year. I'm like, oh, I'd see that, them. But I don't know. Have you ever thought about it?
I've never been to Glastonbury. I've been to Reading twice, and I've been to Download Festival as well in the UK. I camped first year in Reading, and I have this story that always stands out to me about how my sheer love and wanting to go back to go and watch Glastonbury is hampered by me waking up at 3 a.m. with someone whispering into my tent saying, "Sorry, mate, I just pissed on your tent. I didn't realize there was someone in there."
What does that mean? What does that mean? Would you have done that if no one was in there? I don't understand. Great.
Thanks so much. At least I'm inside of it and not on the inside. No, at least he didn't piss into the tent, just onto the tent instead. Fucking hell. Oh, so many fun stories from festivals as well. I watched a guy who had somehow commandeered a bottle of tomato ketchup from one of the burger food trucks. And he was telling me as I was waiting for to go for a pee that was the entirety of his food budget for the week. He was just eating tomato ketchup, which is like fucking hell.
This foreshadowed austerity, Britain, didn't it? This was a sign of things to come.
What else happened? I saw a group of very wasted people trailing after the volunteer firefighter crew, just chanting "sexy, sexy fireman" for about 25 minutes as they were going around there just trying to do their jobs. Britain's weird is what I'm trying to say, everyone. And festivals are very, very weird.
And they have a Labour government. They have a Labour government. Shouts to Jeremy Corbyn. Jazza Islington North holding it down. Shouts to Gunnersaurus campaigning with him. One of the images of the year in my mind, Gunnersaurus and Jeremy Corbyn. But that was good. Keir Starmer seems not great. Labour seems ungood. Let's see what they do, eh?
Yeah, I think definitely the cracks are starting to show, aren't they, in the UK from the perspective of the electoral system and also just how disproportionate this election was, just given how many big players there are and how many big voices are being showcased now in British politics. I think it's worth just sort of touching upon how historic this is from a perspective of the collapse of the Conservative Party. One that I said this to someone during the course of the week in my office, that I don't think people who are outside of Britain understand how much power the Conservative Party of the United Kingdom and Great Britain, Northern Ireland has. It is the most powerful institution, I would argue, political institution in the world. It's embedded at every single level of society. It has a pipeline from the most elite schools all the way into number 10. So it manages to hold on to power. Think about every single level where power is associated at in private business, in the media, in the political system, even in the public sphere. Every single level is completely dominated by the Conservative Party. So to see them almost decimated is one that I never thought that I would see in my lifetime.
San Jose Sharks superfan Rishi Sunak incoming. Can't wait to see him in a Macklin Celebrini jersey at the SAP Center.
100%. Bye, Rishi. You won't.
I will stay with the UK. I love two things this weekend. One, I love Lewis Hamilton winning at Silverstone. I haven't watched that many races this year, truth be told, but I tuned in for this one because Silverstone is usually quite good, and this one was excellent, which there was a lot of good stuff. You had both McLarens dueling with the Mercedes, and then you had Lewis coming through in the wets, in the rain, which he had done so iconically, I think, in 2008. So that was awesome. And then Bukayo Saka lifting England on his back against Switzerland. After, I'm an Arsenal fan, yes, but also human being wise, I love Bukayo. And after the shit that happened in 2021 and the abuse those guys got for the penalty, I don't know if you saw Jadon Sancho's Instagram story on this Bush, but I love that too. Just a good dude. So shouts to Bukayo and Lewis for getting it done this weekend.
Yeah, the smile that came across Bukayo Saka's face when that penalty went in was enough to...
I was so nervous. I literally wanted to puke, and I do not like England soccer at all. So
I think that everyone felt the weight of that moment. Yeah. There was more going on than just a penalty going in. So I'm extremely happy for him. He is a lovely, lovely kid and did not deserve what happened to him. But my God, it was a cathartic moment.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Reminder, we're on patreon.com/open era. Join us there, get the shows right after we record them. Plus, join us on the Discord where we're chatting tennis all the time, including right now. I mentioned the Discord, a lot of great folks in there chatting tennis. Join them, join us over at patreon.com/open era pod. That's it for producer Greg on the ones and twos, and for Simon. Thank you so much for listening to Open Era. We'll talk to you on Championship Sunday next week.